What's up, guys? Today I wanted to come up here and talk about one of my biggest mistakes in retrospect. Back when I was 17, I made a song called Sega Hell. I didn't expect it to do as good as it did at all. I made it in my friend's room while he was in the shower, waiting to go to the mall. It is currently at around 10 million streams on all platforms, and I feel like I have nothing to show for it. It was one of my biggest wins in my life, and I also feel like I turned it into my biggest failure. Now, there are many different mistakes that I made, but there are also many important lessons that I learned from those mistakes. So mistake number one was procrastination, without a doubt. Telling myself that this would last forever and not capitalizing on the opportunity that I had. So I'm just going to be flat out honest. I definitely got lucky. The conditions were right, and the results were a lot of listeners and a huge audience that I just was not ready for at 17 years old. I was making $1,000+ a month in college, all passive income, and I spent it on clothes, food, weed. I was not thinking about what I could do to grow. People were making YouTube videos about this song. I don't know if you know Patrick CC, but there was a time where he had posted a video about me and my boy who I was making music with. And in the thumbnail, he had me instead of my boy. And he's like a music critic, so of course it was an inflammatory video. And instead of taking that opportunity and capitalizing on it, I told him he had made a mistake and to take it down. But that's just one small example. The biggest issue with my procrastination was also my warped perception of my skill in making music. At 17, I was still very much getting the hang of things musically. I hadn't found my sound yet. I didn't even know what software, I barely knew Audacity. But since I had gotten lucky so early, it made me feel like I was already good enough. It wasn't until much later when I sat down with myself and wanted to discover who I was and how my music would reflect that. It wasn't until then when I found out that I was actually neglecting my own development this entire time. I had sat on this for so long that all of my momentum was gone, and it was like starting from scratch. And that leads into the next mistake that I made, and that was losing the momentum. I think for a while I blamed my conditions in life on this. I was a freshman in college, and I was the first person in my family to go to college, so I wanted to do good. I didn't want all that money to go to waste. I didn't know how to tell my parents, who worked hard as fuck to get me here, that I wanted to drop out and do music. I just didn't know how to navigate that. And I did continue making music in college, but my major just was not easy by any means. I majored in exercise physiology with a minor in sports medicine. So there's a lot of biology involved in that. So naturally, I spent a ton of time studying, but I wasn't naturally smart. I was never naturally smart. I wasn't born with genetic advantages in intellect. I'm not even gonna lie, I had accommodations in grade school. I was in the slow classes in middle school. Everything I have now, I worked to get. So for this song to blow up like this, it was very much a handout that I feel I was not ready for. I kind of put it on the back burner while I was in school, and now more than ever, I constantly think about where my life would be if I just kept at it. I lost that momentum, like this circular stone that just crumbled little by little, and it turned into sand and just fell between my fingers. That's what it felt like. And it felt like that because I eventually came to the realization that I can't blame this on school. I had time. I was a student athlete and I was doing clinical internships, yeah, but I had time. Even if it was a couple hours on Sunday, I had time. But did I want it enough? Or was I just cozy making free money? Easy money evaporates fast when you don't work to expand it. And that goes into the third mistake that I made, and it was not being real with myself. I genuinely enjoyed doing music in the beginning, I really did. But somewhere down the road, I lost that passion. I didn't lose it completely, and I never will, but it was not as deep as it was when it started. It could have been my lack of confidence in my ability, or it could have been the X fans, but either way, I lost my passion and it resulted in my tendency of being experimental declining. I'd sit down for hours and try to make music, and I just couldn't anymore. It was more than a creative block. I can't even explain what it was, but it felt like it just wasn't me. Like I wasn't being honest with myself, and it felt like I didn't know, or I didn't have what it took to keep going. And to be honest, I've had this issue my entire life beyond music. My entire life has been an identity crisis, but I see now that that's just who I am. I don't belong in a box. My identity is that I can't be defined. My biggest issue has always been trying to figure out where I fit. And honestly, this was something that I just realized recently. I've realized that I'm not a piece of any puzzle. I fit into whatever container I put myself in. My essence, or my being, I guess, is essentially shapeless when I picture it. But back then, that was a mistake that I had made, trying to fit myself somewhere in terms of my sound, my image, my subject matter. I just was not being real with myself. The next mistake that I feel like I made, and probably the most detrimental, was the way I spent my earnings. Now again, I know I was in my late teens, early 20s, but still, this is something that I regret, and it's exactly what you're thinking. I should have invested that money. I've made $20,000+ off of this song alone, and I've maybe invested $1,000 of that. The rest of it went so fast to clothes and food and gas and shit like that. I was so financially illiterate back then that I couldn't even see what I was doing. I kept telling myself that I'd be this big rapper one day, and it didn't matter what I spent while doing nothing to expand my career. If I invested all of that into some ETF, I'd be sitting at around 50K right now in liquidity from that. And on top of what I've invested since gaining a stable income, maybe even upwards towards 100K right now. If I would have just put that into an ETF, like a high dividend yielding ETF, and just reinvested my dividends. But like I said, these are mistakes and failures, but they're not L's. I feel the only L's that we take in life are mistakes or failures that we don't learn from. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and that being able to learn from this is a blessing in itself. I just don't want whoever's seeing this to make these same mistakes. Throughout my musical journey, I learned so much about myself that it wouldn't even make sense to write it all off as an L. And I don't want any artist out there to feel disappointed or discouraged like I was. Now, this last mistake that I made kind of ties in with not being real with myself, and it was not making the music that I wanted to hear. I got caught in the trap of numbers. Once the X fans left and my real fan base revealed itself, I got discouraged by the drop in numbers. I wasn't understanding that my song had went semi-viral, and that was that. I wasn't giving my audience what they wanted, and I wasn't giving myself what I wanted. I was chasing that viral moment. And to any artist out there listening to this right now, this will be your #1 killer. Listen to your audience and listen to yourself. The numbers are just the numbers. Being consistent with the day ones, the people who got you where you are, that will always feel better than getting a million new people who only know you because of a feature or because of one song. Longevity is how you build your legacy. You can be here for a good time, you can be here for a long time, or you can do both. There's nothing wrong with being experimental. There's nothing wrong with experimenting at all. I just want to encourage you to do what you feel is right for you and for your audience. As the artist, you are creating the vibes and the emotions. People come to you for your specific style. You don't have to change anything if it's working. And if you want to change something, just don't blindside your audience, because they know you by now. They listen to you monthly for a reason, because they identify with you. You've always been different in your own unique way, and a real audience knows that. Just make sure you know that too. And I just want to ask you to do that thing that you need to do, even if it takes forever. Don't wait around on an opportunity. When you get that momentum, hold that momentum. Don't ever let it go. I want to ask you to always be real with yourself. Sit down, go somewhere quiet where you won't be bothered, and talk to yourself. Ask yourself the hard questions. Shit, cry if you need to. Just be real. Just make sure that you're always being real. And be real with your money as well. Be smart with your money. Honestly, anything that does not appreciate in value at this point in life is a pass. Unless it's the essentials like living expenses or food and gas. I'm not going to give you much financial advice, because that's something that I'm working towards as well. But it's something that cannot be neglected, not anymore. And lastly, I want to ask you to always do what you think is best. If it doesn't work, you run it back step by step and figure out where you went wrong so that you can replicate it in the future. Keep doing that and you'll get it right. Trust the process and trust yourself. You are here for a reason, and you only lose when you don't learn. Thank you for 100 subscribers. If you like this video or want more content like this, then leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'll catch y'all later.